Welcome to Watching the Throne.
A lyrical analysis of Kanye West.
My name is Chris Lambert.
And my name is Travis Bing. And today we're talking about, wow, how do you say this? Junya?
No, plebe.
Oh, sorry. Whenever I see this, I want to just say like Junya business. Like that just immediately jumps in my brain.
Junya business. I mean, it's good, I like it. If only that was the name. Instead, us cultured people, know that it's Junya.
Oh, June. June's my favorite month, so that's an easy way for me to remember this.
Is it really your favorite month?
I would say probably October is probably my favorite month. We're in October.
Welcome, Travis.
I didn't realize we were in my favorite time of the year.
Yeah. I mean, you were gearing up for a marathon for some months now and just had the marathon 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's part of why I love this month so much is the marathon is now in my past.
Right. You can just run to the future without a marathon. Actually walk there.
Walk very slowly. Lauren and I went on a little, not a hike. It was just like an easy walk in a forest near us. But yeah, every step, by the end of it, I was walking like a normal person. But at the beginning of it, I was walking like a hobbled person.
Wait, you went for the hike after running the marathon?
So I ran the marathon on Sunday, and then I went on a walk on Monday.
Whew.
But it was
Bold.
okay. I've actually read that a smart thing to do is go on a run the day after a marathon, like a really light jog. So this was my way of doing that.
Smart. I can see it working. I would take the opposite approach and probably just go to the grocery store and get in one of the motorized carts.
Oh, yeah.
And just, wheel myself around in a motorized cart for a little bit. And that would be my recovery.
I've always thought about hopping to one of those. Maybe you and I can do it together one day.
When I lived in Asheville for a little bit, together would be nice. Together. When I lived in Asheville, I tore my meniscus and I was on crutches.
Oh, yeah.
I had what's called a bucket handle tear, where the cartilage gets in between your knee joint, so you can't actually fully extend your leg. It was awful, but I had to use the motorized car because I couldn't actually grocery shop while on crutches. I don't know if you've ever tried that, but it doesn't work well. And because I was 23 in one of those motorized carts, people were giving me dirty looks. They just thought I was some rule breaking kid, riding around in the motorized cart, completely ignoring the fact that I had crutches that are just across my lap.
I think maybe people on those sayings get dirty looks in general, which I don't agree with. Some people need them, but I feel like people are just weird about those sayings. Like, it's not fair that you get to ride that in shop. Like, I have to walk around with my screaming kid.
Yeah, that's true. It did make the same sound as a garbage truck or a school bus when it backed up. So that was also very frustrating because I would go along the cereal aisle, stop myself and be like, oh, the cereal aisle one's actually back here, and hit reverse, and you'd be like, beep, beep.
Yeah, and you can't turn it around because otherwise you're going to be like that Austin Powers scene where he's trying to
oh God, yeah, it'd be knocking shelves down, but you'd have people that just kind of poke their head around the end of the aisle, be like, what's making that beeping sound? And then they'd see me and kind of give a weird look and go away.
Yeah. They probably would have respected you if you had a nice watch or bracelet on.
If I had the nice watch, that would make all the difference, which, oh my goodness. Yeah, that as we start to get into this song, I'm so bemused and befuddled by this song. I have been since the first listening party. When we heard it, I was just like, I don't think I like that. And I'm at a point now where I can appreciate it more, like the energy it's bringing, like the bass, the production aspects. It does have a very unique sound on this album, right?
I guess. It does.
It has an energy in terms of that, just like that bass and that I guess catchiness of the lines.
Right.
But it's still such a weird song. Like, all the lyrics are so fragmented, the flow's so strange. The antagonism is very intense.
I mean, you're right to note that it's an atypical sound on the record, mostly because it's so simple. Like, it is literally an organ playing, which seems weird for the song, because I associate the organ with like gospel, and then it's just the bass. It's just this really heavy, like boom, boom. It just like repeats over and over. Like those are the only two sounds on this entire song. It's just such an odd soundscape, like a weird sonic choice, and people seem to love it, which I guess speaks to like this seems like one of the songs on the album that's most in tune with like modern hip hop, and that like it doesn't need to be like this grand complex like Kanye production like we're used to. It's something like just like that's heavy on the beat and like gets you going, you can bump in your car. It has, and like you're saying, like Kanye's delivery and Playboi Carti's delivery, like it's manic, it's fun. But I gotta say, I'm kind of with you. Like, this is where I feel the most disconnect from like young people listening to music today, because I listen to this and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, it is just organ and bass, and like, and I love Kanye. I actually really like his delivery, but like, he's a maniac on this song. Like, it is just so all over the place in a way that I'm like, I guess I like it, but I think of all the songs on the album, it's probably my least favorite, because before this, we did okay, and Junya were my least favorite songs, and now I really like okay, and this I'm like on the exact same page I was the first time I listened to it.
Yeah, I will never recover from the line. I know a lot of people are just like, they don't like the "left the fridge open, someone took your sandwich" line from Wolves, where I think that's fantastic, right? Because it's such a betrayal. Right, you have people in your home that you think you can trust, and they just are taking your sandwiches and not telling you. Like, who does that? Right. I can picture it. It's cinematic. I can imagine the betrayal. I mean, I lived in a fraternity house for a little bit, so I also had the experience of you buy food, you put it in the fridge, and somebody takes it. And you're just like, you're supposed to, like,
you're my brother.
Yeah, you're my brother, and you're taking my food, and then no one's admitting to it. Like, what the hell is this? But I don't have a problem with that line. I do have a problem with the line 4 or 5 gunners in pajamas. I will never recover from the in pajamas and trying to understand what that.
I'm interested to talk about it. I don't have any solid theories, but I'm sure if we just like start spitballing back and forth, we can come up with something.
We'll figure it out, we'll give it some deep meaning, but yeah. So the album to this point, we've talked about potentially having a few sections, right? Donda chant as an intro, and then there being maybe an initial arc from jail, God breathed, off the grid, and hurricane, as Kanye is kind of positioning himself in this state of feeling imprisoned, like emotionally, with everything with Kim and the fallout from that, his divorce, socially, in terms of like where he's at in his career, this idea of the world being against you and you being kind of at odds with the world kind of comes through on jail, and just a sense of not being free. And we think over the course of the album, we're seeing Kanye work towards this idea of freedom, and how that comes through working through a lot of emotions that you're feeling, reconnecting with God, feeling new again in a lot of ways, so that you have that initial arc that's setting up the tensions from jail, God breathed, off the grid, hurricane, as you're kind of at odds with the people around you, and needing God to come through, but still feeling like at times that you could be drowning and need saved. And then praise God, Jonah, okay, Junya, believe what I say, kind of take us through another arc of songs that are getting a little darker, a little more antagonistic, but also setting up this idea of coming back to life, being reborn. 24, remote control, moon, and heaven and hell really get into that, as well as now you're starting to have this upswing back into religion and faith and needing a change in your life and leaving behind this idea of hell and devils and coming forward into the lights. And then in the aftermath of Heaven and Hell, you have that run from Donda, Keep My Spirit Alive, Jesus Lord, New Again, Tell the Vision, Lord I Need You, Pure Souls Come to Life. That all feels very much upswing. All of the tensions we're seeing in this first arc of the album from Jail through Heaven and Hell kind of fall away, and Kanye resolves a lot of the tensions and negative emotions that he felt in that first half. So beautiful journey, however you want to break it down into sections or chapters, but that really seems to be the main split, is everything before Heaven and Hell and everything after Heaven and Hell. But Junya continues this antagonism that we first saw rising up in Kanye's verse in Jonah. He starts to get a little angry, calling out Drake, we do believe. And in that episode of Jonah, we talked about how me and your big homie go back. He don't even rap. Like, you don't know me like that. Could be Kanye referring to the fact that Drake got brought into I guess not the mainstream, but he got kind of plucked out of obscurity by J Prince, the CEO or the executive of Rap A Lot Records, who has made a lot of careers in the hip hop world. And that it might be a reference to Kanye having a relationship with J Prince. And a week after we did that episode, Kanye was photographed with J Prince. So I don't know if you caught that while you were in Minnesota.
I did. And it really, I guess, been on a weird journey with like this section of the album, because I mean, coming into this, I knew that OK was a Drake diss. Like, that seemed pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But as far as I knew, no other song was like there were lines I knew that were directed at Drake, but like none of the other songs were like, oh, this song's a Drake diss. And then to see that, you were right about Jonah, like part of me like kind of got sad. I was like, like Jonah's such like a nice song, or not a nice song. It's a sad song, but it's a song about like loss and dealing with grief and trying to move forward in the world when like you're losing people around you. And it didn't make sense to me at all that Kanye would, in the end of that, have a Drake diss. Like, it just didn't add up to me. And it kind of made me think like, oh, like, I don't know if I like Jonah as much anymore. But now we're coming to Junya, and we're about to talk about how a lot of the song is a Drake diss. So that would mean there are 3 songs in a row now that are Drake disses, which kind of made me reevaluate things a little bit and rethink this album, because I'm thinking of like Life of the Party too. Like, that was a song where, Andre 3000 wrote this very emotional verse. It has that mom energy, and then Kanye comes in with a Drake diss, and like it feels like things aren't adding up. But because we have 3 songs in a row here that are a Drake diss, it kind of made me reevaluate everything. And I'm thinking what's happening now is, like we talked about this beforehand, I was looking forward to the song Donda, where we hear a lot from Donda. And she has that line at the very end that says, "What did I teach him, and why Kanye ain't scared?" And then I think about Junya, and there's a line, we'll talk about it, but he says, "This on Donda, on my mama, made a promise." And it started to make me think that I was looking at it wrong, that I had this like image of Donda, like, what a nice lady who's like empathetic towards Kanye and wouldn't want him ever to do any, bad, like, don't diss people on your tracks, like, just be a man of God. But you hear Donda talk in that speech, and like, she's not really like that. Like, she has a lot of Kanye energy. Like, she's kind of in your face. And it started to make me think like, it's probably not fair to put Kanye in a box and think that he's not allowed to have these diss tracks on an album called Donda that is that is about his mom, because that strays from the point completely. But now I'm thinking like, maybe it doesn't. Like, maybe Donda told him like, defend yourself, like, stick up for yourself, like, don't take shit from anyone, like, go out there and do your thing. And if that's the case, like, it kind of recontextualizes this part of the album for me. And especially moving forward from Praise God, which is the first song we hear from Donda, I wonder if that's what's happening here in this section of the album, that it isn't necessarily that Kanye isn't being Christ-like or isn't acting in the right way. It's that he's actually channeling this energy from Donda, he knows really well, something that shaped him to be the kind of person he is, something we really don't have insight into that he does. So, looking at Junya now, that's kind of how I'm approaching this song. And I kind of wish is how I had approached Jonah and OK before we had done the episodes. But now that, we're going into this song, I kind of grouped these three songs together like that. They kind of have a different energy to me now.
Yeah, you mentioning that, because I was a little at a loss of how to make sense of Donda's role in this song, given how antagonistic it was. But when we were talking about that, and you made that point and how you're feeling about this, thinking about this, the connection to that line, as you said, and why Kanye ain't scared. Like, we've listened to more of this speech, right? You can hear the audio of it. You can read the full text of it. Genius has the annotation of it, like the whole thing. So you can go read through it. We talked more about it in the Jonah episode as well. And then we've read Raising Kanye, right? You can see interviews that Donda did. She is a very kind woman, a very caring woman, one that, if you're a teacher for as long as she was, and as successful as she was, as well respected as she was, I think it's hard not to have that ability to make people feel good and to treat them with kindness. But she says in this, and I am my son's mother in that speech in Donda. And even reading Raising Kanye, you do get the sense that like Donda was very proud. She was very confident herself, as you're saying. Like, there was a lot of Kanye in her. She wasn't just some kindly, saintly woman that was just like, Kanye, you're the best.
Like, I just think of my mom when I think of Donda sometimes, and that's really not fair.
No, right? Like, yeah. There's just the images that we can easily project on her since we didn't know her. And I think that it's easy to start to, I don't think one-dimensionalize is the right way to put it, but it's easy to start to think that she's not Kanye's mother in all the ways that she probably was, in terms of having her own confidence and gravity about her and perspective on things. So I can very easily imagine her saying Kanye, don't be scared. Kanye, go be yourself. Do what you think is right. You got this. Don't let him talk to you like that. All these things. Also could hear say isn't he your friend? Why don't you make this work? You can hear both sides of it.
Yes.
But in terms of analysis, right? In scholarly analysis, if you are sticking to what's in the text and not trying to make assumptions based on outside information, a lot of the time, what we do have in the album itself is that line, and what did I teach him, and why Kanye ain't scared. And you made note of this in the actual speech, the transcript of the speech. You get Donda saying, I decided to share excerpts from my book and talk on hip-hop, social consciousness, raising Kanye, life lessons. What did I teach him? What did I learn? These are just a few of the thoughts, few of the questions I pondered as I began fulfilling the sometimes arduous task of writing my very first book. What didn't you hear there? I can't believe I kind of looked around on Google for this. No one's really talking about it. The fact that why Kanye ain't scared, that line is not from that speech. I have no idea where that line comes from. I don't know. Maybe Genius just didn't transcribe it in the transcription of the speech. Maybe she does say it at some point in there, but it's not there. We haven't listened to the full speech start to finish, right, to see. It's a 29-minute speech, so maybe it's in there somewhere, but it at least doesn't immediately follow what did I teach him, what did I learn. So it is curious where that came from. But the fact that Kanye includes the line and why Kanye ain't scared from somewhere else, but making sure to attach it right there does feel poignant and does feel relevant to the album as a whole. And backtracking from Donda, where that's said, to putting it in context of, okay, it's Kanye like defending himself, right? Like why he ain't scared. You can start to make theories around that then. Like he's not scared, but is he defending himself more in like the devilish way than the like angelic way? Is it more of a antagonism rather than a spiritual way? Is it just like he should stand up for himself and that's fine to do and then move forward after having stood up for himself? Like it's not necessarily a negative, or
Right.
is it something, there's various ways to interpret it that I don't think we have a primary reading on it, but it is just worth noting that Jonah, okay, and Junya all kind of deal with some of these antagonisms that you face when you are in this world, whether it's just violence in the streets that you're growing up on, that's around you, that you're trying to escape from and make it through, to okay, where you have people that are actively like coming after you, actively causing issues that you're trying to deal with, to believe or to Junya, where you're like now feeling a little more inspired and on top of everything. So you at least do see an arc of like the grief to like the interpersonal antagonism to then Kanye in the song kind of feeling like he's on top of it all.
Yeah. I really liked what you said earlier, like like Donda could also just as easily say to Kanye, why don't you and Drake just be friends? Like, go fix things. Because that you do kind of see that energy towards the latter half of the album, I would say. Like Kanye on the spiritual upswing and finding kindness and peace. That's again we don't have enough insight to this probably because I don't know Donda. Like
Right.
yes, we read her book, we listened to her speech, but like only Kanye knows Donda, like he knows her. And he made this album, he named the album Donda. He knows her best. Like this is what I'm realizing, like it's really not fair for me to judge him for having diss tracks. I think the energy of this album and the narrative of it and the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, like the journey we see him go on, this must be reflective of Donda and how he would expect Donda to see him and view him and raise him in this environment. Like what advice she would give him, like what she would do. I feel like all of that is part of this. Like it even makes me think of like, in the beginning of the album here, there are all these younger rappers like talking about all these problems in the world. Like, is Kanye acting as like a parental figure to them? Yeah. Is he then himself going on from that and becoming, and then reflecting on himself and giving control over to God and saying like, well, like that's the layers there. Like, I can be a parent to these kids, but I also have to like recognize that I am like a child of God, and like and the No Child Left Behind like carries all these like meanings from like throughout the album and like what it means to be a kid and who is a kid in this world and who you act as a parental figure towards. Like all of that, like I'm starting to realize that all of that is happening a lot more than I've actively realized so far. Which is the great thing about doing the show, I think, is that we don't just go in knowing everything. We're going song by song and slowly piecing it together. And it's crazy that Junya, of all the songs, has probably made me realize this more than any of them. Like it's just I hate to say a silly song. It's a crazy song that seemingly to me had no meaning, but now I'm kind of realizing that like it fits in just as nicely as anything else. Like it really does mean a lot towards the progression of this album. And I think as we keep going, I'm going to realize more and more like what place it serves.
The role of Junya, the important, crucial role of Junya, and how we would say that sarcastically at the beginning and now meaningfully at this point.
You know what? I'm going to name my kid Junya.
Do it. And the other thing you talk about, like that dynamic, right? That Kanye is thinking about what his mother would say to him, but also thinking about like being a parent now himself and also being like a mentor and kind of a father figure for people in the industry. I just think back to the original Donda album cover, right? Where you saw the three kids in the sky floating towards the sun. And there seemed to be an emphasis there And the original title for the album, or at least the movie, right, was Donda with Child. So with Child was there seems to be a subtext or a major theme of like children as part of the concept of this album. And the fact that the last song is No Child Left Behind also feels really relevant.
Yeah, it's just such a deeply personal album. Like I definitely knew that on the first listen, but the more we go through it, it really is starting to feel that way. Like it on a level to where I don't know if we can do proper analysis. Like, this feels like so part of well, of course we can, but I just feel like Kanye has insight into things that like we don't know. Like when he says made a promise, like what promise? Like what is he talking about? We can only speculate.
Yeah, right. There's things like that where you're not getting the same degree because so many of the other albums, there are definitely personal things going on, right? But you look at something like Blame Game or even Runaway. Like Runaway is an emotionally personal song, but the lyrics aren't personal. Like Kanye's not telling us about something that he's not spilling the beans on a situation of like, this is what happened between me and Alexis Pfeiffer and this is why the relationship fell apart. He might be thinking about that in terms of writing a song like that, or even him and Amber Rose, whoever you want to assign it to. But I feel like the specifics of the song are just capturing the emotion. It's the same way that a director that went through a divorce might make a movie about a divorce, but the actual situation that plays out over the movie might have nothing to do with what actually happened in the director's life. I feel like that's a lot of what's going on in My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Yeezus. You start to get some more personal aspects on the life of Pablo, but even that feels fictionalized and dramatized a lot of the time.
Yeah, right.
Same with Ye, right? Kids See Ghost as well. Kids See Ghost, I think the Reborn's the most that you really get Kanye kind of explaining what he was going through, and that still was pretty generalized. This album is very different in terms of all the albums after Late Registration.
Yeah. Damn. We're still doing a good job though.
Yeah. I mean, we will absolutely be bringing out the themes and context and things, but as you said, there are going to be things where it's just like, what's made a promise mean? What promise?
Well, let's speculate.
Yeah, is it referring back to Hey Mama, where he talks about like promising her he's going to go back to school?
Oh, hey, maybe he's creating the school.
Donda Academy just made a YouTube video on it.
Fulfilled
Check
promise.
that out. Yeah. So, okay. Should we start with the lyrics? Is there production stuff up front?
Like I said, like it starts with the organ and then the bass comes in. Where does it come in? I think it comes in right when he says ex-strippers, and then it's like kind of there sporadically throughout the rest of the song. So that's pretty much all the production notes that need to be noted.
Okay. Well then, lyrics. We get Junya Watanabe on my ring, which Junya is a famous designer. I'm actually surprised that I don't have the Wikipedia article up anymore, as I did. Japanese fashion designer, was the protege of Rei Karakubo, who was a huge designer in Japan, and I guess has been associated or continues to work for Comme des Garçons, and has done like his own stuff as well, but he's known for taking a lot of basics and just adapting the profiles of them and making things that are very familiar feel very unfamiliar. And people have been digging his style for decades at this point. I'm pretty sure he's the most famous fashion designer in Japan at this point.
I have very little fashion knowledge, so I'm going to take your word on that one.
Yeah. I watched some YouTube and read some articles. Watanabe often uses the word monozukuri to describe his work. And monozukuri means Production or making of things in Japanese, and is a Japanese term for manufacturing. The broader meaning encompasses a synthesis of technological prowess, know-how, and spirit of Japan's manufacturing process. So I guess it's the idea that there's a little bit of like manufacturing or industrialization to his like style and clothing schemes.
I like that.
Yep. He's particularly interested in synthetic and advanced textiles and fabrics. Interesting. But Kanye, we know, has long been fascinated with Japanese culture. His favorite movie of all time is Akira, or it was at that point, but he's constantly talking about anime. He posted Gundam models to Twitter at one point. We know that he was making a movie he made a short film based on the film Angel's Egg, which is this like Japanese classic or kind of cult classic.
Yeah.
And then
works with Murakami.
And when he was first like unofficially exiled in the aftermath of the Taylor Swift interruption, he spent some months in Japan, just kind of studying fashion, like living in Japan, soaking in the culture, and continues to make trips there, I think like a couple times a year. And usually we'll just go around to like Murakami or other fashion places, meet with anime figures. So it's not surprising to me that Kanye would love Junya and then make a song about Junya.
Right.
But beyond the association with Junya Watanabe on my wrist, this actually is a callback. Oh, God. Okay, so this is probably a reference to the song Life is Good by Future, which features Drake. And in the chorus, Drake has Virgil got a paddock on my wrist going nuts. Yeah. Or Patek. You think I'd know how to say it, but essentially Virgil has this Philippe Patek or Patek watch on his wrist, and it's this custom like green watch that looks like staggering. It's really cool. But Virgil custom made it for Drake, and this happened in like 2019, which Drake and Kanye had already had their beef. Like Drake had continued to take shots at Kanye over the years, even though their beef was finished. There were just these subtle things thrown out, which happened on this song as well. So you have Drake kind of crossing enemy lines, so to speak, and making this or you have Virgil crossing enemy lines and making this watch for Drake. And it's something that Kanye ended up pointing out when he got really upset at Drake's diss on Betrayal, the Trippie Redd song that happened. He ended up making that group text, and it had Drake, Travis Scott, Virgil, a few other people in it. And Kanye's like, Virgil, where's my watch? Where's my watch, man? What is this? And so that line is specifically Virgil got a paddock on my wrist going nuts. So you have on my wrist, like the designer's name on my wrist. And here you have Junya Watanabe on my wrist. It's on my wrist is a common enough phrase that I can imagine there's going to be somebody listening that's just like, I think that's a reach, guys. I think that's a reach. But we have specific like Drake references lower in the song. And Kanye even has Move Out the Way of My Release at the end of the song. And one of the lines in Drake's verse for Life is Good is, guys got to move off my release day.
Yeah.
So you have Drake specifically saying like move off of my release. You have Kanye saying move out of the way of my release, and then on my wrist. It just feels too pointed.
And Drake's verse on Life is Good, I mean, the whole verse is about Kanye. Like that to me is like on top of like direct references to lines in Drake's verse, like Drake took shots at Kanye, and then Kanye is taking a line from the verse Drake took shots at him from, and then taking shots at Drake. Like it's just back and forth. Yeah,
it seems just very obvious at that point when you know that Drake took shots. Like that move off my release date is a line at Kanye, because Drake was annoyed at Kanye taking the June 2018 release days. Because Drake on the show The Shop, LeBron's like HBO show, he went on and he's talking about everything that happened with Kanye, and he's saying that he had gone out to Wyoming and met with Kanye, and Kanye asked him or told him, he's like, I need you to play me your album and I need you to tell me your release date. Like, I need to know these things if we're working together. And Drake was like, all right. So played him Scorpion and then told him that the release date was June 15th. And then a week later or something, Kanye tweeted about how he's releasing 5 albums and the first one's coming out May 28th. Or no, what was it? Like May 25th.
Yeah.
And then June 1st, then June 7th or June 8th, leading up to Drake's like release date. And Drake's just like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
So he was really annoyed about that and ended up pushing Scorpion back a couple weeks just to get the proper runway for the album. So that would be why Guys Gotta Move Off My Release Day is a reference to Kanye.
Yeah. And then like you could look at the other lines and like see that they're probably about Kanye, like baby got an ego twice the size of the crib. Like all this stuff that you could just tell that are nods to Kanye, you know, how egotistical he is or how much he thinks of himself, and but you really aren't that great. You're past your prime. You know, your fashion label and all that, blah blah blah.
Yeah. It's so Kanye is aware of it, makes reference to it. So you get the double reference of the like Virgil got the paddock on my wrist doing front flips, which is the other line that's about the on my wrist. So Kanye's making a call back out to that, but instead of Virgil and Paddock, it's Junya Watanabe. Mm-hmm. So Kanye's just bragging about like, you have the Paddock, well, I have the Junya Watanabe. The thing that trips me up, and we've gotten into like my literalness tripping me up on some of these lines recently, is that Junya doesn't make watches. And as far as we know, Kanye's never shown off a Junya watch. Like he hasn't gone out and been like, you see this sick Junya watch that I have that nobody else in the world has. So it seems to be like a brag about something that's not real.
Right.
There is like, we saw something online of like people mentioning that Junya has made men's bracelets in the past, like leather bracelets, but I've never also seen Kanye in anything like that. So I'm just like, what does he have on his wrist? Like,
yeah,
does he actually, is he just like using it to show that like I have something that no one else has because no one has a Junya Watanabe watch? Is there like an irony to the line? Does he just have a watch that's unreleased that he hasn't shown off? I want to know.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I don't think it needs to be a watch.
That's true too.
Because Drake talks about having a watch, but he doesn't even say watch on my wrist. He just says, you know, a Paddock on my wrist. He doesn't even say, he just, whatever he has on his wrist, he's showing it off. So Kanye could be wearing some sort of bracelet or whatever. I don't know if that's the intention, but I feel like you're getting at more of what it is that it doesn't necessarily need to be a thing. Maybe it is a bracelet, but the idea that like you have a Junya Watanabe on your wrist, like you have something that doesn't exist. Like we don't think Junya Watanabe makes like men's bracelets or anything. So like Kanye has something like, I mean, I don't know if this is the intention, but there's something like ethereal about that, you know, like something you can't define or put your finger on. Like it's not something there. It's some, and like Junya Watanabe, like that to me, that whole fashion brand, like that guy's aura seems more suited to Kanye. Like it's like a step above what Drake has. And then even thinking later to the song when he says God's time can't fit on a wrist, that Kanye's not talking about a watch like Drake is. Like Drake has a watch on. He's tethered to time. He's like a man of earth, where like Kanye's on God's time, and God's time like isn't a thing because God's forever. Like, I don't know. Like I'm thinking about all that and I'm like, I don't know if I can make really good sense of it like we usually can in the show, where I can like point to something and it's like, oh, this is what Kanye's talking about. But if I think about just like the spirit of him saying Junya Watanabe on my wrist as a retort to what Drake said, I feel like it's getting at everything I said. Like this idea that like you have something on that's elevated above what Drake has. Like I'm on another level than you.
Yeah, it's just that like extra flex, right? Like you got the Paddock, well, I got the Junior Watanabe. And it doesn't have to be real to carry that weight and that meaning. We know that Kanye could just put anything on his wrist. Yeah. Like he has that money that it's like whatever it is, like I can buy it and put it on my wrist. But then as you're saying, that line at the end, God's time can't fit on our wrist, it seems to kind of be pointing out the superficiality of such things. Like it doesn't matter if you have this designer, that designer, whoever, like what wealthy thing you're wearing on your wrist. The important thing is God's time. And that doesn't fit on a wrist. None of us can wear that. So there does seem to be a little bit of that tension or a little bit of the undercutting of the material flexing that's going on in both like Drake and Kanye.
Yeah. Which is something I think we see several times in this album is Kanye being aware that like you can flex all you want, like God's a step above you and you answer to God ultimately.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back. We've pointed out on several episodes now that remote control seems to have a tipping point in some ways, where Kanye in the first portion of that song is talking about like what he does when he has the remote control. And then he says that like God just grabbed my hand, had a bigger plan, and God's now the one that has the remote control. So there's this transition from Kanye being the one that's kind of running things to God being the one that's running things. And I wonder if this is just like kind of getting at attention like that. It foreshadows a little bit this idea of like you're bragging about these material things, but you're also aware that to God that doesn't matter. And some of the tensions and the drama that's happening early on in this front portion of the album kind of gets thrown out the window as Kanye, once he's given himself over to God on remote control, like changes his tone completely, because none of those things are like as concerning to him as they were. Like this drama is no longer as concerning to him as it was.
Right. Yeah, I think you're totally on point. Like I think an important thing to remember in this album is that while yes, Kanye does go on that journey, like that's an important part of the journey, that Kanye kind of recognizes that like there are bigger things than himself and his possessions. Like there are bigger things you answer to. There are callings. You represent something in this world that goes beyond like all of this kind of petty stuff we see at the beginning of the album, but still all this petty materialistic stuff going on at the beginning of the album. Like it isn't necessarily bad to go through these emotions. Like this is just part of being human. Like these are natural things that happen to people. And Kanye, I think, as we're seeing on the last few of his albums, like these kinds of journeys we're seeing him go on, these upswings where he kind of realizes what's important in his life. He's just really painting a full body picture of himself and being honest and vulnerable and creating something that's very relatable. Like this is something, these are emotions everybody goes through. And it's not like Kanye starts the album, on right in step with God and like, doing the right thing. Like he's got to learn to do the right thing just like anybody does.
It goes back to, you talked about this being the motion on the last few albums, and it seems like with Ye that the most beautiful thoughts are always beside the darkest, or even at one point it sounds like he says are always inside the darkest. It seems to be that he has been balancing the dark thoughts with the beautiful thoughts, and this idea of light and dark, you see it on Ye. We have that 3-1-3 structure. Same thing with Kids See Ghosts. We talked about it on Jesus is King with the 5-1-5 structure, where it's a little more antagonistic, a little more of the ramped up energy at the beginning. And now here we have a similar thing. And at no point on Ye is he talking about that being a bad thing. And even in the interview he did with Jimmy Kimmel in the aftermath of Ye coming out, he said that I hate being bipolar, it's awesome. It wasn't supposed to be an opposite thing. It wasn't supposed to be, it's bad, it's good. It's supposed to be something that was working together. So I think you're right about that. This idea that this early portion isn't necessarily wrong, but it is darker.
Were you just trying to flex it? You were at that Jimmy Kimmel interview?
I was at that Jimmy Kimmel interview, You can see me in the audience.
You could hear you at one point, right?
I clap when nobody else does.
Very good.
That's yeah.
As you
Kanye
should.
says something and he like finishes a sentence and I'm like, and then look around because nobody else is clapping. And then he says something like, it's okay to clap that. And then everybody starts clapping.
See, you're a trendsetter.
I'm a leader, you know? I'm a leader. Okay, so Junior Watanabe on my wrist. We get all of that. There's also a GQ article that came out in June that talks about Kanye's watch collection. And you get some cool things. Yeah. Most recent being a Cartier crash, which is like a very distorted looking watch. It looks like it was in a car crash. We saw Kanye wearing that in 2018, 2019.
Yeah, that was cool looking.
So, okay, Junior Watanabe on my wrist. Tell him this, did he miss? So, I guess, like, did he miss? Does the watch, like, the watch looks great, right? Like, he didn't miss with this watch is what we're referring to there.
Yeah. I guess I hadn't really thought of it that way. Because this whole song is a Drake diss, I assumed a lot of these lines could just be read that way, and it's just like, did he miss? I guess you're right. Like, it follows the watch line, or not the watch line, whatever he's got on his wrist line.
Yeah.
You would assume that's what it means, but I always just took it as like, have I missed yet? Like, have I made a bad album? Like, all I do is like churn out winners.
Yeah, which would be like we go the like, did he miss? And then at the end, it's I can't really see where did I miss, and it's this idea of like, yeah. So you could view it as third person, right? Like the he is Kanye, and it's like, have I missed? Like all my albums are awesome, or it could be referring to Junya and whatever Kanye has on his wrist. Like, check out this piece. Did Junya miss? No.
Or is the he capitalized?
Oh, did God miss? Like, no, God did not. Yeah, right. And then I can't really see where did I miss, which is that a reference to him wearing masks?
I thought about that.
Like, I can't really see since I have this mask on. Where did I miss? And it's a little like sarcastic because it's like, you didn't. Like, you just You're asking facetiously. It's a rhetorical question. Like, I didn't miss, and me wearing the mask doesn't affect me.
Yeah, it's like, a bit of a flex. Like, I don't even have to see to know, like, I didn't miss.
Yeah. Like, I have no misses. Shut up. But then we go from that right to ex-strippers, which kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yep, sure does.
New killers. So you have, like, people that used to be strippers. I'm guessing like women that used to be strippers that are now doing something
men
else.
Can be strippers. Channing Tatum
Men
taught
can
us
be
that.
strippers. Yep, that's true. Maybe I should be genderizing these, but it's easy to view it as like a female than male, like ex-strippers, new killers. But maybe the ex-strippers are the killers, right?
Shit.
But it's this idea that you have people that are no longer stripping. You have people that are now like being introduced to killing, which kind of gets back to some of the subtext of, not even the subtext, some of the themes of Jonah and OK with this antagonism, the street violence. Even going back to Off the Grid, where Kanye's talking about steppers and dangers on the streets. And then it says, shy guys tell them. So yeah, like people in Chicago know, like, new killers are made every day. Like, people from Chicago can tell you about it. This on Donda, On My Mama Made a Promise. So, okay. So we're going from ex-strippers to new killers to this on Donda, On My Mama Made a Promise. Like, this song, this energy, this life, everything I'm going for right now, like, is on Donda. Like, it is... I'm doing it in her name, like I'm swearing to it, and I made a promise to her. And again, we're assuming like that promise is for greatness. That promise is to like be true to himself. That promise is something that we probably don't know, that he hasn't necessarily defined. but that you could probably pick up some of the context of in the song itself, Donda.
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously this verse, I don't know how you piece it all together, like make it make sense. I guess those first three lines, ex-strippers, new killers, shy guys tell them, like, it's kind of environment painting. Like, he's just like creating this image of like how the world can seem sometimes, or how it feels around you, like the tension, like the different paths people go on. I don't know. And then like relating it back to Chicago, like there must be something to that. And then to move on to Donda, which I guess makes sense, going from Chicago to Donda. And like, you made a promise to her. So like that's how I kind of have always seen this verse. Like, he's looking around himself, like seeing the world and thinking, like, it just makes him think of Donda. Like, how can I move in this world? Like, how can I find meaning and help and something like this chaotic? Like, I made a promise. I don't know, something like that might be happening. But like you said, we don't know what that promise is. Like, if we had more insight into that, like maybe this verse would come together and suddenly make a lot of sense. But as is, like, this feels like one of those moments where like we can't be in Kanye's head and know what he's thinking. Like, we don't know what a lot of this is referring to.
Yeah. I mean, you could maybe start to say something like the idea that ex-strippers, I mean, typically people think of moving on from stripping as a positive, right? Like, when you're stripping, you're in like
Right.
a worse position and you get things together, even though stripping can be very lucrative for people, and you can have like the
If you're no babe alone, it can be.
I don't. Is that a Showgirls reference?
It is.
Okay, then yes. But it's like the industry itself isn't inherently like bad, right? But I think typically the general idea is that a lot of people that go into that career are in need. And then if you're an ex-stripper, it might be that, things are on an upswing. So you could look at that as redemptive in some way, where new killers
Right.
is a downswing. So it's like somebody that is moving away from something that's considered less than good, while somebody else is moving into something that is considered less than good, which might be getting at that, like, angels versus
Right.
demons
That's a good
dynamic
point.
that we've been talking about. Or redemption versus falling down, like steps forward versus steps backward.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start to theorize about the symbolism of these roles and how important the adjectives are, it's not just strippers and killers, it's ex-strippers and new killers. You can start to extrapolate a little more meaning from it that aligns with some of the other things that we've talked about on the album. And we do know, and we've talked about it over and over again, how important Jesus Lord is. And this idea that, knowing someone that needs Jesus and having Jesus come into their lives and then finding redemption, the idea that strippers and killers might need Jesus to find redemption is also, I think, a trope or a common way of painting it. So it might be in line with that.
Gosh, I don't even know if I should be talking about this, and maybe I'll cut it out. But I suddenly like was thinking, like, are these lines directed at Drake at all? Because I think of like killers. Like, isn't that a line that Kanye's used about, like, didn't he use it about Jay, like, don't send killers at me or whatever?
Yeah, he talked about, like, don't send your killers at me.
Yeah. So like, and I know, and I don't know, it's not like Drake has killers, but like maybe Kanye could be referring to like people in Drake's team that like can dig up dirt on people. I don't know, shit like that. But the ex-strippers thing, I just searched Drake strippers.
Yeah.
And I'm finding this article where Drake was retiring strippers' jerseys.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, so you remember this? Okay, so you actually have insight into this. Like, I'm just not saying definitively these lines are doing that, but like that is just another theory to throw out, that it's getting like these lines are directed at Drake and that's making Kanye like, channel the Chicago guys and channel Donda to retaliate against this force.
Was it Drake's, like the mother of Drake's child, an ex-stripper?
That's what I was wondering. I thought that was true, but I'm not seeing anything on Google as I pull it up. But I'm seeing a lot of articles about how much Drake loves strippers.
Yes. Sophie at least was into seems some kind of sex work, whether physical or just visual. So you might want to label her as an ex-stripper now that she is the mother of Drake's child. I'm guessing that she's no longer quite up to the same things that she was before. Yeah. So, I mean, it could be in reference to that. And Kanye did talk about before on Jonah, mentioning that when you go on tour, like, you're going to check in with me. I think the implication being that in each city that you go to, you're going to be worried about like the people that I have there, or are you going to be safe? What was it? He says, whole lot of steppers and they step in and they sunny like that and they come in right back. And when you go on tour, bet you check in because my guy's back to work. It's a Monday like that, which would be in that case like Kanye's killers, right? Like they might not be. I mean, they could be, since you'd imagine it would be like street people from Chicago. But
and two, thinking about Jonah, because that song is about Jonah Ware, a kid who died from gun violence, and both Vori and Lil Durk are talking about gun violence, and then Kanye seemingly works that conversation into his beef with Drake and kind of equating the two. Like, what you're doing is also harmful. Like, you are putting people's lives in danger, in quotes, like in the industry, by acting like this. So maybe then, like, these lines, like thinking ahead too, like this line that gives you a headache, like all summer, 45 governors in pajamas, like this idea that he's suddenly like painting Drake. He's painting a picture of Drake as a force bigger and like more dangerous,
Wait, he's painting Drake that way?
Yeah, just like somebody who's like who's being antagonistic and has negative energy and is coming at you constantly,
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Because it sounds like that's what he's essentially doing on Jonah as well.
He would essentially be saying like the beef that which is what you were saying, the beef that you are creating between us is what leads to this kind of violence between things. And then you'd be saying that like first verse, like ex-strippers, new killers, these are things that like Drake has. And then Kanye's just kind of saying this on Donda, my mama made a promise of like, I'm standing up for myself. Like, I'm not scared to like call you out, to call things out, to go toe to toe if we need to go toe to toe. I could also view it as like Drake has his ex strippers, Kanye has his new killers.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just completely theorizing here. We have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, this song, one of the other things is that this song is so fragmented. It's hard to start to make assignments to things. You're just not having the amount of lyrics to get context from.
Yeah, right. So take all that information with a grain of salt.
Yeah, figure out how you feel. So we get the chorus, Junya want Nabi on my re. Tell him this, did he miss? Yeah. The same kind of thing repeats. And then we get the second verse, all summer. All summer. That's the first time we're getting that since Hurricane too.
I like it.
45 gunners, like people that are using 45s. They're the gunners, the steppers in pajamas, which pajamas might be like slang that I'm now realizing I just might not have realized that it's like common slang at first. Um, but I'm guessing it's like in sweats, like in just, I don't think literal
Yeah.
pajamas.
I mean, maybe that's just like, that's your way of showing how badass you are. It's like you'll kill somebody in pajamas.
Right. Like you do it in your sleep kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure a lot of people are just shaking their heads right now.
Yeah, I'm sure there's someone that's just like, guys, this is exactly what it means. Like,
Tweet at us.
yeah, let us know. Because otherwise it's just like, I mean, gunners in pajamas, they piranhas, like him just wanting like the piranhas pajamas. I don't know. Summer gunner rhymes. I don't know why you need the pajamas unless you just want piranhas. Buy at the store in hours like we planned it. You don't really need the A rhyme. So it's strange that like the A rhyme comes in. You could just keep going with like an ER, like ending.
You could.
But I don't know. Right now I'm going with the gunners. Like they're so used to gunning, they could do it in their sleep.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. They piranhas, in terms of piranhas are known for swarming, like, and having such like needle teeth. Like famously in movies and cartoons, you put your hand in the water and lift it up and it's just been chewed to a bone. Like all the skin and meat's gone. That's how ferocious and quick piranhas work. So calling them piranhas just shows the efficiency with which they do what they do.
Yeah. I mean, how could these lines not be directed to Drake? Like, how is the chorus directed to Drake, and then the verse not? Like, this has to be the most random song in the world if he just suddenly starts talking about these unrelated things. It's just it's such a strange song.
I know. And then buy out the store in hours like we planned it. Where's that come in? Like, is he buying out a store? Like he's just going to shop and like flex that he's buying out like all this clothing, which comes back to like having the Junya Watanabe. Is he saying that like the piranha? I could see something where it's like all summer we have been releasing things and these people will go out in their pajamas. Like gunners will go out in their pajamas to wait for my like clothes or shoes that are coming out. And they like swarm and buy everything that I put out in the store, and it all sells out immediately, which is exactly how he planned it.
Yeah, interesting. I guess I took that line as a little bit disconnected. Like, if the first three lines are related to Drake at all, I guess I don't know really how they are, but I assumed that last line was just another flex. Like, any new items we put up in the store, it sells out in a couple hours, and it's gone. Like, that's how viral I am. And it's just like kind of like the Junya Watanabe thing, like a flex of like, I'm better than you. I'm more viral than you.
Yeah. Even though Drake will sell more albums,
Yeah.
Kanye will sell more of everything else.
Right.
And you could get that transition, right? Like the same way that he's talking about like these gunners are like piranhas in the way that they'll like swarm and kill. Like you can also think about the fact that that's the exact same way people treat the things that I like sell. They swarm it and devour it.
That could be it.
So you could either view the whole verse as being about people buying things. You could view it as that transition where it's like initially street stuff that transitions to how Kanye sells things. Or you could even view that last line as Kanye just has the money to buy out the stores and like rock this fashion. Like it's him being materialistic.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then we get the chorus coming back, and then Playboy Cardi comes in saying 4 or 5 summers, hold up, 4 or 5 summers. So it's playing off a little bit of like 4 or 5 gunners saying 4 or 5 summers. But instead of being like 45 or 4 or 5, it's like FOR 5.
Yeah.
So for the last 5 summers, we took over. And you're just kind of getting holed up as, I guess, part of the flow.
Yeah.
So it's like for 5 summers, we took over. And then Kanye comes back in with Born in Atlanta. Oh, that's where the A rhyme comes in. The pajamas, piranhas, Atlanta, Montana. Okay. Huh. Strange. He was born in Atlanta, spent the first 3 years of his life there before moving to Chicago. I guess Montana's just forced in for the rhyme.
Like I guess he's saying that Atlanta's way cooler than Montana.
Yeah, I was born in Atlanta where it's cool, like, and I guess you could view it as maybe a difference in terms of like cultures. Like Atlanta is known for having like a rich black community, and Montana is not known for such a thing.
Yeah, I guess so. It could go that far.
But born in Atlanta, not Montana. Excuse my manners. I got standards. Oh no. Yeah, he's saying I got standards. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, if you say excuse my manners, usually it's because you're not doing things well, like you're showing bad manners.
Yeah.
But then he's saying I got standards. So he's breaking his standards, but still saying that he has standards. Interesting.
I guess he's saying, like, excuse my manners, but I have standards. Like, I can't help it. Like, I have standards, and Montana's not Atlanta. I have to say it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what it would be going through. And like, I was starting to disconnect the two and just being like, he's just saying that he did something wrong, but he still has standards. But yeah, it might just be that he's kind of trash talking Montana a little bit. And he's just like, yeah, I don't mean to like talk down on Montana, but I got standards. And
it also makes me wonder, is that like, God, no, that doesn't make sense. I was starting to wonder if he's equating like Montana with Drake. Like, I'm from Atlanta, not like Canada, not from like, the north where you're from.
I mean, Canada does have the A rhyme,
Yeah. But I mean, Drake, I think he grew up in Toronto. Like, that's a gigantic city.
Yeah, it's very it's very big, very metropolitan. So. Yeah. And then you just get Cardi. Yeah, excuse my manners. I got standards. I got status. You don't want static. It might be. I know everybody loves Cardi. There's a huge crossover between Cardi and Kanye fans. I know Cardi can deliver some great verses, but this has to be the most says nothing verse that I've ever heard in my entire life. It's just like declaring that for 5 summers we took over, and then like I got standards, I got status, you don't want static. It's very
I think he's there to aid Kanye. It's not like he's, he wrote out a verse. Like, this is at least more than we get from him, like, off the grid. or not as much as we get from him, sorry.
Yeah, not as much.
But I think particularly in this song, and really in Off the Grid as well, like, he's kind of there to create more of a vibe and match Kanye and elevate the song in that way.
Well, to be fair to Cardi, and I can see people... I can't see you. Maybe I can. But I can hear you going like, Chris, part 2, Junya, part 2. And yes, to be fair to Cardi and Junya, part 2, that continues. It says, you don't want static. I'm from Atlanta. Hold up. Came from the attic. Hold up. I'm in a Mercedes. This not practice. I'm not leaving. Hold up. Where's my mattress? In the back of my mansion. 100K on my mattress. Yeah, I'm all about fashion. And she all about fashion. She rock Yeezy. So we always matching. Cardi and Yeezy. How'd that happen?
I'm enjoying this.
So you get like a full verse. So Cardi did deliver like a much stronger verse in Junya Part 2. So Kanye does not give Cardi the space that Cardi, like, he doesn't show off Cardi in the best light by cutting all of that. Instead, we get what is mostly just sonic flavor.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, I mean, I don't know why that verse wouldn't fit on the song. The song is so short. I don't know. Who knows what Kanye's process is?
Yeah. It's end of the day, it's just a focus on like standards and status, and you don't want static, which gets back to the conflict element of it, right? Like that you don't want us to be fighting. You don't want what I'm bringing to the table so maybe you just wanted to end on the antagonism. And the confrontation aspect rather than going off into all the other stuff that Cardi went off to. Yeah. Because as we're saying, that there's a diss element to this. There's a combativeness to this song.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right about that.
Okay. So then we get verse 4, Kanye saying, see more comments than I see commas. which I feel like that should be reversed. Am I wrong there?
You're saying he should say, I see more commas than comments.
Yes.
Interesting. Why do you think that?
Because everybody would see more comments than commas, right? Because most people in their bank account have like 1 comma, like luckily 2 commas. Very few people have 3 or more commas, but most people see more than 3 comments on what they're doing. So if you're seeing more comments than commas, yeah.
So you think he's talking about the bank account?
Yeah, I'm thinking money.
Oh.
So like the commas are the commas in like, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions. So if you have more commas, you're richer.
Yeah.
So like I see more commas than I see comments. Kanye has millions of followers. People talk about him all the time. Like if he's seeing more commas than he does comments, that shows how wealthy he is.
Interesting. I have definitely never thought of it that way. I've thought about these lines a lot, trying to make sense of them. And I think I always just come back to like the first thing I thought of when he says this, and that he's saying like, oh, everybody is commenting about you all the time on the internet. Someone like Drake is making comments about you, and I'm seeing more of this. I'm seeing more of these like one-off takes about me that I'm seeing commas. And I assumed he meant like a well-written article or something, like something thoughtful that would have a lot of commas in it and like has more nuance and like goes through a lot more thoughts than a comment, which you don't usually put a comma in a comment because it's like this really short, quick thought,
Okay, I could see that. So it's just like quick thoughts versus like paragraphs.
Yeah, I think that's what it's doing. And then I guess that could be related to Drake, but I always took that as more of like the public.
Yeah, just the public in general. And I mean, they go in dummy. That could play into that idea. Like they're only able to give these like single comments rather than thoughtful like arguments because they go in dummy.
We go in Donda.
They're just dummies. Why we go in Donda. Yeah, so you're getting at that dichotomy. So you already had the dichotomy between like dummy and Donda, right? They're going down this dummy path while we go in Donda. We're going this higher, uplifted path, the smarter path, since Donda was an English professor. It could even be getting that too. Like people are typing out these comments and they're not grammatically correct. Mm-hmm. And Donda being an English teacher would notice commas. I don't know if you want to take it that literally.
I like that.
But and so there are a few different ways to take that. I think at the end of the day, it's just getting into the difference between like us and them, right? Like they're dumb, we're better.
I am thinking though, did you think the comma was a reference to the bank account because of the I won with the Bucks boy?
Yeah, I mean, he does talk about like the money aspect there, right?
Interesting, yeah.
Yep. Which let me be honest, just kind of setting up the Giannis, right?
Yeah.
Like, let me be honest, Giannis. Yeah. You're just getting the flow in place for that. So let me be honest, kind of filler. I won with the Bucks boy. So I won can be read WON or ONE.
Yes.
So you can hear it as like I won with the Bucks boy, as in like I'm one with the Bucks. Like I have a lot of money, like I'm with money kind of thing. Or I won with the Bucks, like I'm
better than you because I have more money.
Yeah, I have more money. Like I won the lottery when it comes to like how much money I have, so to speak.
Yeah.
Let me Giannis. And I don't know if you want to view boy as like, you can imagine like wealthy people like talking down and just being like using that as kind of their like talk down lingo.
Right.
And then let me Giannis. So Giannis being a Antetokounmpo for the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's the third way of reading it. I won with the Bucks. Like Giannis just won the NBA title with the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's why he's saying, let me Giannis.
He could be ONE with the Bucks. Like he
That's
is
true.
on that level.
Yep. Yep. He's a champion as well.
Yeah.
And Giannis, I mean, it's a good, like, the Bucks just won, so it's a relevant line just pop culture wise, and also given Kanye's wealth, it's a relevant line pop culture wise. But there's also a video from February of a game between Milwaukee and Toronto, and Drake has been a big Raptors fan ever since the Raptors started winning. And Drake could, no, I think that's unfair. Or that's fair. Unfair of me to say, like, question Drake's fandom of the Raptors.
Yeah.
But in a game between Drake's team and Giannis looked at the sidelines at Drake and said, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah.
So there was video of Giannis, like, kind of calling out Drake, which is pretty funny. And I don't know if Kanye knew that, and maybe that's why he built a line around this, given that, like, so many that would add to the Drakeness of all this, and some
I
of the
think Kanye
subtextual
definitely
Drake
did it.
shoutouts. You think so?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a whole song that's a Drake diss, and then he's talking about the Bucks, who lost to the Raptors back in 2019 in the Eastern Conference Finals, but then won this year. Like, I feel like that's a jab at Drake. Like, Giannis won. Like, this guy you beefed with at one time, like, now he's on top, and the Raptors didn't even make the playoffs.
Take that, huh?
Yeah.
Take that. And then Drake on Certified Lover Boy has a song called 7 a.m. on Bridal Path. And it's a song that talks a lot about Kanye. Like, there were two songs on the album that tended to focus on Kanye, and this was one of them. And he has a line that says, it starts off with, "I wish everyone could tell me exactly what they need from me. The first second they speak to me, I'm not with all the secrecy, secretly beefing me behind closed doors, but playing it peacefully for the streets to see. My guy have some decency. Don't move like a puto, could at least keep it a buck like a tentacupo." So he fit in this Giannis line, which I'm pretty sure he had this written before Junya came out, even though Certified Lover Boy came out afterwards. There was a article from September 7th, 2021, where this guy, Graydon Gordian, on Twitter after the Bucks won the title, said Drake working a tentacupo into a line is going to be tricky, but he'll figure out something. So that's July 20th, 2021. And then Drake ESPN posted in the aftermath of Certified Lover Boy coming out that tweet saying, "Leave it to Aubrey to find a way." And Drake actually commented on the Instagram post saying, "Only did it because of this tweet." So it seems like Drake saw that tweet in July, knew that he was going to put something together, like, around Giannis. But then you have to imagine that hearing Kanye on Junya using the Giannis line, that Drake's just like, okay, I know he's talking about me specifically because he says move out of the way of my release.
Yeah.
And as we talked about earlier, that being a reference to Life is Good. Mm-hmm. And Drake calling Kanye out for, like, stepping on his release date.
Yeah.
So Drake's just like, all right, I hear you, Kanye. I heard your Bucks line. I'm gonna, like, could at least keep it a buck like a tentacupo. When Kanye said, "I won with the Bucks." Like, I mean, obviously Bucks and a tentacupo is an easy way to make that rhyme. So I could imagine somebody making the argument that it doesn't have to be a reference just because of Bucks and a tentacupo. But because 7 a.m. Bridal Path focuses so much on Kanye over the course of the song, and he would have heard Junya ahead of time, it just feels like a little bit of an acknowledgement of Kanye and of that line.
Yeah, the stars aligned for Drake on that one. He's like, I got to make this a tentacupo rhyme. And Kanye's talking about Giannis on a song where he's talking about me. So no, I kind of like this, though, because now Life is Good. There's a path we can see here. Life is Good to Junya to 7 a.m. on Bridal Path. Like, what's Kanye going to say? What's Kanye going to reference from 7 a.m. on Bridal Path? We can keep the connections going.
We'll see on the next album in 5 years. We shall see. Okay, so you get a little bit of a narrative around this line. The spirit is on us, the spirit of Donda, which calls back then to multiple times, like this on Donda, on my mama, made a promise, and then I guess that's the only
whole
callback. Oh, we go in Donda. That's
Yeah.
right. We go in Donda. Yeah, the spirit is on us, the spirit of Donda, which, I mean, we've talked about, people talked about why the album's called Donda, and you got into this with your earlier comments about the idea of, is the album dedicated to his mom? Is it supposed to be about his grief for his mom? There were reviewers that insanely were detracting from the album because they're just like, because it's called Donda and it doesn't get into like his grief over his mom, it's a failure.
Dummies.
They're like, well, it might be because it's getting into something else. You can't just assume it's about like grief or dealing with that. And this song is one of the few times where he's kind of just outright saying the spirit of Donda, the spirit is on us. Like, this is for Donda. This is inspired by Donda. It gives some context to the speeches we hear on Praise God and Donda itself, where it feels like, all right, Kanye is channeling his mom, which is exactly what the chant was doing as well, right? It was kind of bringing this healing energy. It was bringing the focus to Donda. And it just seems like he is rekindling this sense of who she was and who she made him and who he is through her, which getting back into this process of like coming back to life, being new again. It's just kind of a rediscovery of what his mom taught him.
Yeah, you noting that stuff, like what the critics say, is kind of depressing because it's just so reductive. Like, that's a surface level observation that, I mean, you and I both made when we first listened to Donda. You think like, oh, like it's Kanye struggling with grief, but the more you listen to the album, the more you realize it's so much more complicated than that. But then that makes you realize like, oh, obviously a reviewer would write that because they listened to the album like once, maybe 1.5 times, and then write a review. They try to sound smart, and this album's just way too complicated for a surface reading like that.
Yeah, it disappointed me when I was critical of one review and somebody was saying like, well, they probably got the album in advance and got to listen to it a bunch of times before writing the review. And it's like, no,
They did not.
They did not. Yeah, no. All right, so we get the spirit of Donda, and that's when we get God's time can't fit on a wrist, which I think would be in line with people thinking like it's about a watch, or at least a callback to Drake flexing about his watch, right?
Right.
It's like, so you're bragging about this thing, but you know, the main important thing, God and God's time, doesn't fit on a wrist. So like, what's it matter that you have this Philippe Patek watch or Patek watch?
I think it's Patek. I listened to the pronunciation while we were talking.
All right. This Philippe Patek watch, when like God's time doesn't fit on a wrist. So the time that you have on your wrist is just like stupid time, you know?
Yeah, right. I'm on God's time.
That transitions from like can't fit on a wrist to Junya want to have me on my, which I don't know. Junya want to have me on mine. So he wants to have me on my wrist. Is that what he's saying?
Oh, wow. God, I never even realized he says something different there. I just thought it was the same line he had been saying.
I mean, it could be. Genius could be wrong.
Junya. No, that sounds right. I'm thinking about it.
Junya.
God, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it could just be like an ad lib, like, but it could be saying like, we talked about how like Junya doesn't actually make watches. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's like a wishful thinking kind of thing. Like, well, Junya wishes he could have like me wearing his watch, but
yeah, right.
I'm not going to wear like his watch or anyone's watch. I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't have a good theory on that one.
No, but it's just, I think the bigger thing would be just the undercutting. Like, we're starting to see the dichotomy form between like Donda and the spiritual starting to overtake the superficial aspects,
right?
Which starts to get in, and when you are stepping into like the spirit of Donda and what she talks about how like it can't always be night, quoting the Gwendolyn Brooks poem, and then also in the speech that she has on Donda and like, you know, Kanye not being scared. it just seems to kind of be getting into this idea of the spiritual starting to win out over some of the darker aspects that we've seen, especially over this stretch.
Yeah. I also want to apologize to any video viewers. They may see me standing up once in a while. I have to stand up and stretch my leg a little bit sometimes. Driving me nuts over here.
It's okay. It's okay. Then we get Move Out the Way of My Release, which is the callback to Life is Good, as we talked about earlier, where Drake was saying, say my days are numbered, but I keep waking up. No, you see my text, baby, please say some. Wine by the glass, your man a cheapskate, huh? It's one of the generic, like, you have Drake often working in these generic conundrums he's having with women, where he's like with a woman, but things are going positive, but also not going positive. It's a little back and forth. And he has that going on in this verse, even as he's like taking shots at Kanye in the middle of it. So it goes, wine by the glass, your man a cheapskate, huh? Guys got to move off my release day, huh? Bitch, this is fame, not clout. I don't even know what that's about. Watch your mouth. Baby got an ego twice the size of the crib. I can never tell her ish. It is what it is. Said what I had to and did what I did. Never turn my back on FBG. God forbid. Virgil got the paddock on my wrist doing front flips. Giving you my number, but don't hit me on no dumb shit. So we have all that. But Move Out the Way of My Release, Kanye making the callback to that. But Consequence had tweeted out that they were looking for Drake's release date and wanted to know when Drake was going to drop. And there was all this talk in the aftermath of that of, is Drake not dropping because Kanye's going to drop? Is Kanye trying to drop the same week as Drake? Are we going to get this album war? And this line kind of reinforces that of like, yo, you need to change your release date to accommodate me. And right. Drake did end up releasing, like the week after Kanye?
Yeah.
So it just seemed to be one of the narrative of the like album release was Kanye kind of looking for Drake's release dates. And yeah, I guess we know why, because he's just he was probably upset of Drake feeling like, Kanye apologized in the past saying that he wasn't trying to step on Drake's toes with those releases, even though Drake had told him when Scorpion was coming out. Kanye just kind of got caught up in the excitement of the albums and said those dates, and that he apologized to Drake. He should have been more respectful of that, but it seems at this point he's just like, nah, never mind. Yeah. It's my release, you move out of the way.
Absolutely. It's Donda. Yep. He better.
Yep. Trying to get me off my Q's and P's.
I say that line all the time.
So mind your P's and Q's is a phrase.
Yeah.
Which is getting back to manners. Which I don't know why that phrase exists.
I guess we could have looked it up beforehand, but yeah.
Yeah, we could have, but that's what it gets at. Yeah. So trying to get me off my Q's and P's is just him saying like, you're trying to get me to act reckless. You're trying to get me to not behave, right? You're going to make me lose my manners, which I guess would come back to him saying, excuse my manners, I got standards.
Totally, yeah.
So he's trying to like not fight Drake, but Drake is making it to the point where Kanye wants to fight Drake, which is kind of paid off on Pure Souls. When we get to Pure Souls, Kanye makes some Drake references with always had mob ties, stood on my 6 points, how could I not rise, which mob ties is a Drake song. 6 is the number associated with Toronto. And then I can give $1 to every person on earth, man, it's got to be God's plan, which gets back to Drake in the God's plan video, giving people like dollar bills or giving them money. And then he follows up the God's plan line specifically with, man, I swear these boys keep playing. We gonna have to square up then. We gonna have to send it up then. Mm-hmm. And he's just kind of embracing at this point, like, yeah, I'll fight you. Like, I'm feeling good. I'm on my Pure Soul stuff. Like, if we need to fight, we need to fight. So be it. So it seems to kind of like embrace getting off of his Q's and P's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't losers never lose in peace? Calling Drake a loser.
I love that line.
Ain't nobody round me losing sleep. So I guess people aren't losing sleep about what Drake's going to do.
Right.
Or
like it's
the
not bothering
threat that
anybody
Drake
in my
poses.
camp.
Yeah. And then saying, better find God before he find me. I mean, this could be Kanye talking to himself, right? Like, I need to find God before God find me.
Okay.
Or it could be Drake's or Kanye saying this to Drake, like, better find God before he find me. Like, you need to find God before I find you, kind of thing.
Oh, I always took it as, because Genius has the he capitalized here. That's not how I took it. I took it as, Drake, you better find God. Drake better find God before he finds me. So like Drake better go and like reconcile with God and like, confront himself before he finds me, because if he hasn't found God by then, like I'm going to whoop his ass.
Yeah. Okay. I hadn't read it like that either. I'd read it as like, okay.
It could have multiple meanings. So I kind of like that it could do that.
No, but I like what you're saying in terms of like the he is like Drake, right?
Yeah.
Like, he better find God. So Drake is the subject, right?
Yes.
He better find God before he find me. Yeah. So like
go
make amends with God. Yeah. And we actually have evidence of Kanye saying this to people.
Yeah.
You may remember the leaked text message that came out that was Kanye texting, and he said, "Good morning, let's work." And that was at 9:34 a.m. And then at 11:23 a.m., when that text was unanswered, it's, "You're fired, go home." And the person in question texted Kanye back saying, "I'm really sorry. I have no excuse. I set an alarm for 7:30 a.m. And for whatever reason, my phone wasn't alerting me. I woke up at 11:08 to missed calls and got dressed as fast as I could. Lou was already in his way to get Boogs, and they just got here. I didn't call back right away because I was in a panic trying to find a ride. I know this is unacceptable. I'm sorry." And Kanye's response was, "Stop texting. Go find God. Come back after you found God."
Oh my gosh.
And I imagine that conversation took place between the first listening party and the second listening party, right? I don't think this was something that predated the Stadium era. And we know that these Junya lyrics existed like ahead of the, like,
right,
at least as early as the first listening party. So I don't think Kanye's referring to this conversation, even though it's very fitting in terms of like somebody losing sleep and going to find God.
Right.
But I feel like Kanye saying like, "Go find God, come back after you found God," is just something he might be saying to people at this point. Or because he wrote the lines, he's just like has the Junya lines in mind as he's just responding to this guy.
Yeah, it's like an intimidating thing to say. It's basically kind of saying like, "Hey, I'm one with God. I'm already on this level that you're not at yet. So like, go find God, and then you can come back and work with me."
Yeah. You like sinner person that like doesn't have your life together. Like, go find God.
What a strange like Christian way to think about because like that's kind of a demeaning thing to say to somebody, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
But I also like it because like, there's ego and intimidation to it. I don't know. I get it. I'm not saying anything bad about it. It's just it's kind of a funny line to me in that way.
I mean, people were making like a big deal out of this of like, how dare he? These people are working so long. But it's also, if you show up a few hours late to a job with a project as delicate as this, and when you're getting paid, I imagine a good amount of money, like anybody would be getting fired for showing up like a couple hours late. If I showed up like 2.5 hours late to Subway, I'm pretty sure they'd fire me back in the day in high school.
This doesn't sound atypical for like Kanye. Like it sounds like working with him is very intense and he's ready to go at the drop of a hat. Like this seems in line with everything we know about him.
Yep. But at least he allows for redemption, right? Come back after you found God.
Absolutely.
So
and
it's
that
like
person
you're
could have found
fired,
God
but
that day.
Yeah. Like, hey, I went to church. Like, send Kanye a picture of you in church.
Yeah.
And then, you come back.
Yeah. There you go. Get your job back.
So better find God before you find me. Yeah. Like, I like that as like, you better go talk to God and find God before you come back, because if not, we're going to be sending it up. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you could also view the he as like Kanye, like talking to himself, like I've been antagonistic and like I better find God before he find me. But that's a little at odds with how much he's already felt like he's found God.
Yeah, right.
So like from God breathed to hurricane to praise God. But even on praise God, he talks about like coming out the graveyard and like working their way back to life. So it could be in line with that as well.
Could be.
But I do think it's probably makes more sense of him telling Drake to say like, tell the devil good night and then go to sleep. Like you just need to get your shit together. You clown child.
That's right.
Yep. So pretty.
Did we do the last line?
Tell the devil good night, go to sleep.
Did we talk about that? I guess you were kind of talking about it.
Yeah, I was just talking about it in terms of like that's what he would be telling Drake, like go find God and tell the devil good night, like go to sleep. You stop messing with the devil and your devilish ways.
Yeah, another line where God and devil are back to back. Kanye's, it's just something we see him do several times in the first part of the album.
Yeah, there's been a giant amount, like from God breathed to hurricane, off the grid even keeps making like mentions of like God, but then going full antagonistic. So you're getting this contrast. I mean, devils and demons get brought up on Jonah as well as praise God and Jonah.
Yeah, praise God and Jonah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we see it a lot. And then it comes up again on Heaven and Hell specifically.
Yeah. Song called Heaven and Hell, yeah.
Yeah. So this dichotomy between the devil and God is a huge one. One of the main themes on the album.
Yeah.
So I guess Drake's the devil on this album.
Sure. That's how I always thought of him.
Interesting.
No, I like Drake.
Sure.
Yeah. I like Drake. That's as far as I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah. He seems like a person.
And I also like some of his music.
I still really like Thank Me Later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you were always talking about that album. I remember back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. First, I bought that in Man on the Moon when I got back from living in Australia.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, these new artists are great. It just like felt like the fresh new generation.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a few songs I like. I mean, I love, I'm blanking on. Say I love it, and I can't remember the name of the song. Nice for What. I love Nice for What, and I love Passion Fruit. But yeah. Other than that, it's mostly, I don't know. It's not always my thing.
Yeah, sometimes it hits, sometimes it does not.
He's talented though. He's got a corner on that market.
He does. He's figured out his lane and sticks right in it.
He sure does. For about 7 or 8 years now, he's stuck in that lane.
Yeah, stucking.
Stucking. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, he's stucking to that lane. So, okay, Junya, we end with this kind of energy of Kanye telling someone to go find God.
Yeah.
And telling him to tell the devil good night, go to sleep. I still like the idea that there's some self-reflectiveness to that as well, but I doubt that might be intentional. But it does kind of transition us to believe what I say, which is another in this line of kind of antagonistic songs, except prettier. It's less dark, it's brighter, but we are continuing to see Kanye kind of going through talking about his frustrations with people he feels have wronged him. And in this case, it's what went wrong in his relationship with Kim.
Yep. It's really interesting to think that the energy is transitioning between Drake and Kim. Like, obviously not in the same way. Like, he doesn't have the kind of beef with Drake that he would have with Kim, but it is interesting to think that like we never got this kind of insight into their relationship before this. Like we knew they fought, and Kanye talks about it on like Wouldn't Leave, well, when he says something that disrupts their relationship or casts them in a bad light. We know they went through the Wendy's drive-through and like, they were obviously like discussing something and Kim was crying. Like we knew obviously like any marriage, like this shit happens behind the scenes, but this is the first time I feel like we get it this directly. Like every song Kanye has about Kim is like nice and corny,
Right. You think back and it's like Lost in the World to Bound to
Wolves, FML.
Wolves, FML. 30 Hours even in that first verse where he's kind of talking about like me and wifey made a movie. And then you're getting Wouldn't Leave.
And then he talks about his family a lot, so like it kind of extends to Kim in that way.
Yeah, Jesus is King, you get closed on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like where he's just protecting his family. But yeah, having this this is it's what we were talking about up front, right? The difference between this song and Runaway or Blame Game or any of the other songs Kanye has had in his discography where his relationship is falling apart.
Right.
This feels even more illuminating about the relationship than anything on 808s.
Yeah, right. So I'm excited to talk about this one. I haven't delved into the lyrics hardcore, but I gotta say I love the sound of this song. Like this is exactly what I want from a Kanye song.
Yeah, it's pretty glorious.
Oh, I love it.
Just glorious. So that's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Until then,
we need you to please, for the dear love of God, keep it wavy.
Stay loopy.
Oh yeah, stay wavy. Shit.